because this is like I said, a huge topic that a lot of us struggle with. So if you have the ability, if you're on the live, to chat in the chat box, I would like you to find that option right now and just say hello for us. If you're on your phone, I believe that you have to swipe down or swipe up or to the right or left to find the chat box. And I'm not sure which. I know one of them is going to mute you, but I am going to be in control of muting everybody this morning just so we can cut down on background noises. But if you have that ability, right, awesome. So we got some people in the chat box. Good, good, good. I'd like you to find that right now, because if you have questions, this is where you're going to interact with me. For those of you watching the recording, welcome. If you have questions, as always, you can just email us at getinspired@bonniekelly.me. Again, that's getinspired@bonniekelly.me. So that's actually, if you just replied to the email that you got this recording in, well, that's where you're going to be able to find how to connect with us. So it makes it easy. Good morning, Nicole. So glad to have you with us. I know you got a big Bali trip coming up for you. I think Maggie's having technical problems. She had a little bit of, I saw a glitch there. But anyways, let's get started. As I keep saying, I'm excited. I think I'm just excited this morning. Can anybody else tell that I'm excited this morning? I just keep saying that, which is great because it is an exciting topic. We're going to be talking today about winning the war for your worth. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this topic to all of you today is because I think one of the most common ways that our subconscious mind, or one of the most common connectors that all of us struggle with, is feeling low self-worth, feeling low self-esteem. And low self-worth is just another way of saying low self-esteem. And so when we can really connect to what it means for us to be able to have a higher level of self-worth, to love and accept ourselves no matter where we're at, no matter what we've been through, no matter what we look like or feel like, and to really be in that place where we have complete self-acceptance. I mean, I just imagine what that would be like, not only for your world, but the world that we live in, right? I mean, just imagine what this would be like if everyone in the world loved and accepted themselves. If there was no more of this comparison, no more of this self-shaming, this self-deprecation, if everybody truly loved and appreciated themselves, what difference the world would make. So Maggie, just so you know, if you have low internet signal, which happens sometimes when you're at a cafe, I don't know if you can hear me, and for some reason it won't let me mute. Let's see here. I want you to just turn off your picture. If you turn off your picture, it'll make it a lot easier for you as well. So let's see if I can mute her this way. It's just not, there it goes. So if you just turn off the picture, it'll give you better quality. I don't know if she can hear that. So let's see, Maggie. You turn off the pic, it will give you better service. Okay, there we go. Right. Okay, cool. I'm in the boonies. Nicole has it too. Yeah, so turn off the picture. That's the easiest way to stay connected with us in here. So I just wanted to make sure to put that note out to her. Perfect. All right, let me get back on topic now. Okay, guys, so as I mentioned, this is just it would make a huge difference, not only in our lives, but in other people's lives. And so today we're going to take this personal. So I'm going to ask you some questions. If you have paper and pen, I want you to write it down. If you have the ability to just be present here with me today, I encourage you to do so. I mean, it's so easy to just get distracted. We are connected to everything, and so we will be, multitasking while we're listening to this, and I encourage you not to do that. I encourage you to just be fully present here with me today. We're talking, now under 60 minutes, where we are going to just talk about you. We're going to really figure out what it's going to take to increase your self-worth, to eliminate some of these insecurities and this toxicity that has been weighing you down and holding you back. So if you could eliminate any of those distractions and bring yourself here, just grab a piece of paper and a pen, you can get something out of this. And not just get something out of it, you can begin to work through it together with me. And I encourage that, as well as if you're listening to the recording this as well, is that just to eliminate those distractions, find paper and pen, and be willing to dig a little deeper. Because personal development as well, it's personal. It's about you. So even though I'm your coach, And I'm going to ask the right questions. It boils down to, are you willing to do the work? Because hearing things, knowing things is only one element. When we begin to physically change, that's when we're going to see results. But that takes time. Just like if you go to the gym. If you went to the gym only once, you can't leave there expecting to be ripped, right? To be totally like just awesome muscles and just having the body that you desire. It takes consistency. It takes constantly going to that gym, that constant workout for you to get the results that you desire. And well, your personal development, your self-worth is no different. Your motivation is no different. All of these things take consistency, time, practice, and patience. Consistency, time, practice, and patience. And so if you're not investing the energy into those things regularly, well, then the toxicity is going to continue to win. And we'll talk about that a little bit today as well, is that how your toxicity is the default knee-jerk reaction, right? That is just the old programs that it's going to win over and over and over again. And we want to really kind of reclaim our power around that. And we're going to teach you how to do that today as well, okay? So for many of you who are watching this, I think a lot of you know me and know my story. But I always like to spend a few minutes in the beginning just sharing about who I am and why I am an emotional intelligence coach. Now I just introduced a word, emotional intelligence. If many of you don't know what that is or what that means, it basically just sums up your ability to understand your emotional set point, and to use your emotions to guide behavior versus emotionally reacting. And when I say reacting, it's not always reacting in anger or outburst or blowing up. A reaction could be depression, self-deprecation, it could be procrastination, it could be self-sabotage. So it's really understanding your role and participation in the results that you don't desire or don't like that are happening in your life. Okay, so that's what it means to be emotionally intelligent, and that is the basis of what I teach. But who I am is a much different story. So some of you might have had a chance to read my book, and if you are interested in learning more about the transformation that I've made, you can grab it on Amazon. It's True to Your Core is the name of the book, and it'll elaborate a lot more than what I'm going to share today. But looking at me, right, it's very easy to assume, well, I've had a well-crafted life. I have an amazing house. I have an amazing husband. I drive an amazing car. I have an amazing career. I have all of these things that are going for me. And on the outside, it's very easy to just assume, well, she must have had a good childhood. She must have had a lot of things handed to her. Well, that couldn't be farther from the truth. See, I had experienced a tremendous amount of neglect, abandonment, and abuse in my adolescence. I had physical abuse and then sexual abuse that started at the age of 8 years old. So if you can imagine all of this toxicity and this traumatic childhood where, you know, you weren't allowed to use your voice. You were constantly just beaten into submission. You weren't allowed to really fully express yourself in a way where you felt safe. Right? Is that these belief systems started to develop in my mind at a very young age, that I wasn't lovable and I wasn't worthy of love. Those belief systems started to manifest into my behaviors, right? And as a teenager, now I'm acting out. Now I'm angry, right? And I'm expressing my anger and trying to numb out the pain through drug addiction, through just not caring. I mean, my attitude towards life was really F it. And I was a huge rebel, and I just was reckless. I was reckless with my life. I was reckless, you know, just with my, you know, with my body, with where I was going in the world. And based on what I believed, that was understandable. I didn't care if I died. In fact, I welcomed it because I was so miserable inside. All of those painful experiences from my past had taught me that I didn't matter and that I wasn't worthy. And so as a result, you know, that like I was trying to find a way to escape that in the most destructive manner imaginable. Well, flash forward till I was about 21 years old, and I was about to commit suicide. I was at this point where I just reached the threshold of pain. I couldn't take it anymore. It was just one thing after another. I had found myself homeless again at 21 years old. I had found myself in a position where, once again, no money, no direction, and I would have moments of doing good and then self-sabotage back into this place. So I was constantly circling, into this spiral of just being back to validating that I was worthless. Like, see, Bonnie, that's why nobody cares about you. You're homeless. You can't find a job. Your car just got blown up. I mean, just all of these experiences just kept validating and kept me stuck. Well, at 21 years old, I got the opportunity to reconnect and meet my real father, who lived out here in California. And thank goodness that the loss of his children had sent him on a personal development journey like no one else. And so he had studied for over a decade from the loss of his children. He had went and studied how to better his life, how to better his mind, and how to better himself. So if you can imagine, when I first connected and came out to California, I was a whirlwind of a mess. In fact, it was luckily he was prepared for that, because I just came in and, he knew how to be able to emotionally handle and cope with me. And so he had a lot of patience, and he actually introduced me into this world. And it really was one quote that helped kind of change things around. It was like a spark, and I hope to spark your minds in some way today as well, like he did for me. And that spark was really this, is that he handed me a book. And within it, though it had a lot of points, the main point that I pulled from it was this, is that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Now, that really struck me to my core, because I had never in my mind really connected the dots that the suffering that I was experiencing, even at that time, was optional, that I had an option to opt out of suffering. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. I had only known suffering until that point. So I want you to be thinking about even just this quote in your own world. Because when we think about pain is inevitable, right? Every one of us can relate on our pains. Every one of us can relate with stories and experiences of dysfunction and abuse and betrayal and hurt and abandonment and neglect. There's some element, or even loss, there's some element that we can all connect on to some way within our pain. So that part's inevitable. It's a part of life. But the suffering is optional. And I suspect if you are suffering with low self-worth and low self-esteem like I was, you too are suffering right now. And maybe it's not to the extreme that I was, right? I mean, that was the beginning of my journey. I pray that if anybody's watching this, that you're not at that point. If you are, it's okay. I hope to be an inspiration of hope of what's possible. But for many of you, you live an okay life. You live a good life. But it's not great. It's not epic. It's not extraordinary. And that's still a form of suffering. So we want to be able to eliminate those barriers and help you find this truth as well. So you can free your life, to free your mind, and to finally win the war for your worth. Are you with me on this one? Okay, if you are, I want you to put in the chat box and say, Bonnie, I am with you. I got this. I'm totally on board with this. Are you with me? Let's see. Are you guys ready? Awesome. I love it. Kathy's like, I've got this. Yes, Nicole says, I'm with you. We got Maggie with a heck yeah. I'm going to PG that one. Awesome, guys. Well, let's dive into it a little bit further, okay? Good, good, good. And if you're watching this recording, I want you to say, are you with me? Are you with me? Are you ready to win this war once and for all? Because we want to take back our power. Because a lot of our power was robbed from us, and we're going to talk about why it was robbed and how it was robbed and how we can begin to pull it back as well. So I'm super excited that you guys are with me this morning for this really heavy, very emotional, and very important topic, okay? So very important. All right, so self-worth is defined as the sense of one's own value or worth as a person. So it's really your self-esteem or self-respect. Now, the reason why I start off with this definition is because I want you to recognize the emphasis in the first sentence, the sense of one's own value or worth. Reason that I'm pointing this out is because when we think about our self-worth, I would say 90% of the time, how we value ourselves and how we define ourselves isn't based on our own sense of value, is it? It's typically based on other people's sense of value. Are you feeling me on this? Okay. So it's based on other people's perception, our mothers, our fathers, our society, our boyfriends, our friends, our peers, our colleagues, right? Is that we will put our worth and say, well, I am worthy because I have this job, I have this career, I have this money, I have this thing, I have my parents' acceptance, I have my parents' love. However, that is not the definition of self-love. That is not the definition of self-worth, right? That would be others' worth, right? That's what other people find us as worthy or acceptable. So we have to start here. We have to really start to recognize that you have to define what your sense of value or worth is as a person. Are you hearing me on this? You have to create this definition, because this is the actual definition, and it tells you that you have to create the definition. Okay? Right? It doesn't say this is the box of how you are how you are worthy. So if you fit in this box, that equals you being worthy. But yet we've been conditioned to believe that's true. We've been conditioned to believe that, a ideal mother looks like whatever's in the box. We believe that an ideal father looks like whatever's in the box. That an ideal role model or success fits in this box. But that's not what defines somebody's worth or value. So the first place for you to start, so hopefully you've got that paper and pen. And the very first place I want you to start right now is writing down, what is my definition of self-worth? What do I define as being worthy? Now, here's the hard part with that, okay? Is that as you are writing that down, it's going to be very easy for you to kind of stray and say, well, that equals this much in my bank account, or equals this level of success, or this kind of whatever. I want you to pull that back, because the energy and the emphasis will still be on things outside of you. All right? You do not have to accomplish or do anything to be worthy. So we want to create a definition that resides inside and not being reliant on things outside of us. Okay? Are you with me on this? We need to find things inside of us that define our worth, not things outside of us. So I want you to really put some thought into this, is to really decide, what does it mean what defines my worth? What makes me worthy? What makes me valuable as a person? Because once we can really get a clear definition, a clear idea of what our worth and our value is, well, now we can start living from that space versus living from the definition of maybe what the world or society deemed as worthy. And we can take back our unique power, our divine power. Because your definition is going to be different than mine, will be different than Nicole's, will be different than Maggie's, will be different than Kathy's, will be different than G's, right? These are just some of the names I'm seeing right now on my screen, right? It'll be different for every single one of you, and that's okay. That's why it's the sense of one's own value. It's your value, right? This is your definition. You get to decide. Tell me that's not empowering, right? Because when it comes to self-worth, it's about reclaiming your power. It's about taking back your power and saying, this is what I choose to deem me as worthy. This is what I choose to believe makes me worthy. And it is not contingent or dependent upon anything that's outside of me, that it exists in here, in my heart, in my mind, 24/7. And I choose this. And I choose to believe and to know that I'm worthy. Now that's being resolved, right? That's a complete commitment. And we'll get to that in a little bit as well. But I really want you to define this definition and to continuously be tweaking it and adding to it. And then putting it somewhere to remind yourself of it, because it's that important. It's that important, okay? All right, so let's be able to talk now. Let's move on and talk about what is going to rob you of your self-worth, because that is going to be the next thing. Let's see here. I don't know why that's not. Hold on just a second here. There we go. Okay. Let's move on to what's robbing us from our self-worth. I think somebody's put something in the chat box. Let me double check. I always want to be interacting with my loves here. Okay. Oh, good. Good, good, good. It is our birthright. We are children, part of the great I am, is what Kathy says. And Maggie put in the chat box, I am good, I am happy. Absolutely. All right. Is that this is your birthright. Your self-worth is yours, and it's yours to define. It's yours to own. However, it gets robbed from us. Our self-worth gets robbed from us, and not intentionally, right? I mean, there's no real robber baron like you see in the image here that is running around stealing people's self-worth. However, as a society, as a culture, as a consciousness, we have not evolved to a state yet where we understand the implications of our emotional and mental well-being, especially when it comes to raising children, especially when it comes to schools, especially when it comes to peer pressure, right? And so as a result, we are conditioning our children and ourselves and our parents, and it's not blame, right? I just want to make awareness here. Like, it's not blame, it just is. All right, it just is. But we've been conditioning to put our value, to put our worth in things that are not reasonable or achievable or acceptable for ourselves. I had the honor to go speak at a youth leadership conference. There's a bunch of juniors and seniors. So juniors and seniors that were all in leadership, and everybody was there teaching them about business, and everybody was there teaching them about, you know, how they can be the best version of themselves and the most successful versions of themselves in life and in business. And of course, me being the emotional intelligence teacher, I just sat back and listened for a while. And you know, as the kids became very intrigued with me, you know, because I'm the quiet one in the background, just listening and just kind of soaking it in. And so a lot of the kids came up to me and were just like, you know, well, what is your perspective? And I said, well, honestly, I want to ask you, how do you feel right now? And all of them said, I feel overwhelmed. I feel that I have so much pressure, that I can't meet these standards, that I'm just not enough. And it isn't that the parents, you know, pushing them, you know, to just reach their max isn't a bad thing. I think it's a great thing that we challenge our children and that we are helping them, you know, push their limitations and their barriers. But what it was teaching them is that it was that they had to, that there was no other option, that they would be a loser, or that they wouldn't be enough, or that they wouldn't be good enough. And that was what's being interpreted in their minds. That's not necessarily what's being said, but that's what's being interpreted in their hearts and their minds. Well, guess where these beliefs and these insecurities that are surrounding our self-worth come from? That kind of conditioning. And so, yes, we need to challenge, and we need to push, and we need to, you know, to challenge all of ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves, and make sure that we know that our self-worth is not dependent upon achieving those things. But rather those things are just points to prove to ourselves, you know, that we are capable of doing that, but knowing that we're capable regardless. Does that make sense? All right, that our worth is not tied to what we achieve and what we do. But it's important, I recognize that so early on, that this is a big part of where we struggle with our self-worth, is this conditioning. So this is what robs us, is that we have our parents, society, and painful past experiences and memories that will condition us to believe things that are not true about ourselves. And it doesn't mean that somebody walked up to you and said that you're not worthy or you're not enough. But rather it's sometimes in just what we witness, and even more so what we perceive. Okay? It's what we perceived from an experience. And that really falls on our minds, but without guidance in our adolescence, you know, our minds are going to fill in the blank with the worst case scenario. And what is more painful to a child than feeling that they don't belong, or that they're not loved, or that they're not enough, or that they're not worthy. Seriously, I mean, what is more painful to a child? That is the ultimate pain. And so these are our biggest fears that begin to manifest in the mind through these conditioned experiences. Now, it's so important to recognize this because all of us have conditioned experiences. All of us have, parents that grew up not knowing self-worth and self-esteem. In fact, I heard a statistic a few years ago, and I'm sure it's different by now, but it said that 74% of teachers think that it's a parent's responsibility to teach self-love or self-esteem. And 71% of parents believe that it's a teacher's responsibility to teach self-esteem. So if you can see, there's a huge disconnect into whose responsibility it is. And there's a displacement of responsibility that's happening when it comes to teaching us as children. And the reason why I'm emphasizing kids so much is because we all were one, all right? I'm not talking necessarily about what you need to do to raise your children. What I'm talking about is just what has conditioned us through our childhood. Does that make sense? But there's a second big conditioning as well that happened that needs to be discussed, and that's fear. Because a lot of our self-worth issues, our self-esteem issues are rooted in fear. Think about that for a moment. The fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, the fear of abuse, the fear of neglect, the fear of failure, the fear of loss. What is your fear, right? We have these underlying fears that are driving these insecurities and this worthiness issues, that we're so afraid that if I'm my authentic self, if I'm my truest self, if I'm the fullest expression of myself, that I'll be rejected, or I'll be abandoned, or nobody will like me, or I'll fail at it, and then it's going to prove that I'm not enough, or it's going to prove that that I can't be trusted, or that nobody can depend on me. And so these fears, these underlying fears, will paralyze us from changing our worthy issues. And so we continue to lose the battle for the war of our worth. We continue to lose it because we're so afraid that if I do something different, then I might not receive love. And the pain that you feel now, feeling unworthy, is just painful enough to not change. It's just painful enough to not change. It's painful and it sucks and you don't like it, but it's just painful enough for you not to change. Because if it was painful enough, you would make the change. You see, humans change for two reasons. You learn enough where you want to, or you hurt enough where you have to. Okay? We learn enough where we want to, or we hurt enough where we have to. Unfortunately, it's human nature to often go for the latter, where it has to hurt enough for us to change something. This is why even in relationships, and I just did a video on the self-sabotaging cycle in relationships, is that we'll stay in a relationship until we can't take it anymore, until the pain is just so big and I just am not capable of handling it anymore. So we have to realize that fear is a motivator underneath that. Right? There's a fear of making a bad mistake or making a wrong mistake that will keep us paralyzed. And that pain is just painful enough that we can tolerate it. And many of us, all right, many of us have a high pain tolerance. Many of us have a high pain tolerance because of our past experiences. I personally have a very high pain tolerance. It takes a lot for me to really finally just be like, okay, enough. I can't take this anymore. And that's because I've had to tolerate a lot of pain and dysfunction in my past. So my tolerance level is high. So I've had to work on lowering that so I could be I'm willing to make change a lot sooner now than what I used to as well. Okay? All right. So are you guys getting something from this? Hopefully you're getting a couple nuggets right now. If you're in the chat box, tell me what your nuggets are, right? Like what is your, what are you really pulling away from this as we continue to move on? Okay. So now I think we're going to get to a place where we're going to talk about how we can begin to transform this. And the transformation is going to take 3 different steps. We're going to talk about 3 different ways that we are going to change. And I'm going to tell you the easy way, and I'm going to tell you the real way. The reason why I break it down like that is because everybody in the personal development world is looking for a quick fix. Everybody is looking for a quick fix. We've been conditioned. I mean, if you just think about the last 10 years of how just lucky we are to have everything become instant, right? So I grew up with dial-up internet. Some of you may remember that. Nowadays, we have on-demand internet. And I mean, think of how frustrating it is when the internet's not connecting, or we have low service, or whatever it is. We're infuriated because we're so used to it being on, like, very quick. Television now, we have on demand. We can watch anything, whenever, wherever we want. We have fast food in 3 minutes or less, or it's free. We have all of these, things in our life that has told us that we get things fast, we get them quick, we get them easy. We have so many medications to help us feel better very quickly. I mean, there's just a lot of emphasis on, the 7-minute workout and, 7 days to get the perfect booty, right? We want these quick results. And so that's why I say I'm going to tell you the easy way to how to change, but then I'm going to tell you the lasting way on how you change. Because all of us can get quick results, right? I mean, if we could really focus our attention for 18 days, or even 14 days, we can actually see and develop a little bit of a change. But it's not going to be lasting results, because lasting results require us to physically change the way that our belief system is operating as an automatic system. Does that make sense? Because we, just like the negativity right now that's in your mind, the self-deprecation that's in your mind, that's on autopilot. You don't have to try for that. You don't even have to fight for that, right? That just comes up naturally and with ease. So to transform that is kind of the same process as how it was installed. It was installed, right, through conditioning. It was installed through repetition. It was installed through over time. And there's a big gap of time where this stuff was just getting validated to the point of where it's built itself up, and now it's true. Now this is what we believe, right? It's become true to our core. So what we want to do is that we want to be able to start to be able to transform that. So our auto reaction, right? Your knee-jerk, default reaction is in a place of compassion and love and grace and self-esteem, whereas the negative self, where it's that you're not capable, you can't do it, you're not, that you're just going to fail, nobody loves you, whatever that BS is, right? The default is that becomes the weird, right? That becomes the unusual. That becomes the uncomfortable. And when that comes up, you're like, whoa, that's not normal for me, versus vice versa. Are you with me? But that takes a lot more time and energy. Okay, so I want to make sure to answer things in the chat box as we go. That's the fun part about being live. Okay, it says, I understand myself and the way I see my own worth at a deeper level. Good. I want to learn to grow and change, not because I have to. Yes, right? So that goes back to that statement, is that we change for those 2 reasons. You learn enough where you want to, or it hurts enough where you have to. And we really want to get to this place where we're learning enough, where we want to change. But the trick is that a lot of times our desire for change isn't a strong enough motivator to overcome obstacles. So when we're in pain, we'll do anything, right? We'll move mountains because we're just like, I'm done with this. And so this is the hard part when it's like learn enough where you want to, is that we have to want to beyond the adversity, want to beyond the sacrifices, want to beyond the pain. Because all of us, it's very easy like to want something, but then when we hit resistance to be like, oh, well, I didn't want it that bad, like I'm not willing to do that to get that, right? And the truth is, like, when you grow enough where you want to learn, there's still those same obstacles, there's still the same mountain to climb. There's still going to be adversity and resistance that is going to show up. And so the reason why I put that is because I want you to know that when it comes to wanting to change, is that you have to still like really put in this level of tenacity and this resiliency and this relentlessness. Okay, I love that, relentlessness, to be willing to move through adversity and to consciously expect them to come up, right? That these are challenges that are facing. How bad do you want it? I say this is my belief, okay? The universe is going to constantly test you. How bad do you want that change? Are you sure you really want that? Are you willing to make these sacrifices for that? Are you willing to do this? And again, if we're not aware of that, we're just going to be like, no, I'm going to go back over here because my life was fine. It was good. It's okay, right? And I always say okay is mediocrity. Like, we're going to get out of that and we're going to get into epic. But getting into epic is going to still take a little bit of overcoming those not a little bit. You still have hurdles to overcome because it requires change. Cool. Side tangent. Hopefully somebody got something from that. But it's important. I think it's just a huge nugget to be able to talk about. All right, so let's talk about solutions now, you guys. All right, let's talk about the very first step. And I've been alluding to this all the way through already. And what do we need to do to start to change this, to change the way that we feel and that we think about ourselves? And the first thing that we need to do is we need to get to the root. Now, root means that this is where you have to understand how you play the game of worth, how you play the game of life. Your self-worth is rooted in your belief system. This is that automatic, right? This is where it shows up. And you know, if you don't want to really just think about self-worth, think about, you know, your insecurities. Think about your self-doubt. Think about when fear comes up. Now, fear is one of your greatest allies for tracking the root. I know that seems kind of crazy for some people, but seriously, think about it. Fear is your greatest ally into discovering the root, because the fear is the expression of something under the surface. The fear is the expression of something under the surface. And so when you can really connect the dots to your fear and connect to figure out what's under that surface, what is it that I truly think and feel, and what is it that I believe that is under that? That is under that. And here's the trick though, because fear will also mask itself in blame. I was just talking to somebody the other day and I loved it. And she was just saying, you know, she was saying, Bonnie, well, my problem is that my parents, you know, have conditioned, they expect too much of me. They have this, you know, and all of these experiences made me this way. And I said, yes, that might be true. But now the energy and the emphasis isn't to the root, right? That is to the outward thing that influenced the inward issue. That was the emphasis is on the outside, not on the inside. So we need to connect it in. I said, okay, so what was the result of that? Well, and then she said, well, it caused me to have a fear of abandonment. Awesome. Fear. Here we go. Fear is closer to the root. Fear is the indicator. Great. All right. What are you most afraid of? What is it you're most afraid of validating? And she says that I'm not lovable. Boom. Now we've got close to the root. Okay. Now we've got really connected to the root. We've been able to say, all right, this is really what I'm most afraid of. And it's an I statement. It's an I statement. The root isn't a you statement. It's an I statement. And we have to get to that. And not only do we have to get to that, we have to begin to see how it's rooted. Where else does it show up? Where else does this belief or this belief that I'm not lovable show up in my finances, show up in my business or in my relationships or with my children or in the way that I'm thinking about myself or my food, diet, and nutrition? How is it rooted? Okay, because just like the roots on a tree, you don't just have one root that is going to feed the tree, right? If the tree, in this case, is the worthlessness, is the insecurity, well, we've got these roots are rooted in a lot of directions. They're getting nourishment from a lot of different areas. And we need to discover what that is. We need to map out the mind. We need to map the mind to really understand how this belief and all of these memories and these experiences and this conditioning and these behaviors and these reactions all contribute to the root. So that's the true answer. Remember when I said I'm going to give you the easy answer and I'm going to get you the true answer? The easy answer is just find the root, right? The true answer is you have to unresolve and you have to dig up the weeds at the roots. I mean, this means getting on your hands and knees and getting in your garden, and you got to be pulling these weeds at the root, not just cutting them down. Just because we know what the problem is, we can't just cut it. We have to dig into it and really figure out how this is rooted in the mind so we can alleviate it for good. Are you with me on this? We want to alleviate it for good. We want to give you permanent transformation. And that means that we have to dig up all of this crap. We got to like get it out of the mind. And then we also have to release and we have to replace. But we'll get to that in just a second. For right now, we need to get to the root. Okay? We got to get to the root. And so here's some questions to help you do that, because I said I'm going to make this very connected. In what ways do you feel you are lacking self-worth? So you really got to start with this, right? You need to discover the root. What's the tree, right? What's the tree trunk that's above the ground, that's easier to detect? And it's below fear, okay? So we got to get below fear and below the conditioning. And then we're going to connect with how it's rooted in the mind. And so those questions will look like this. What memories support the lack of self-worth? So what memories or experiences support the lack of your self-worth? This is your evidence, right? These are the root, the thicker roots that are under the surface that are giving the most nourishment to the belief. You see, the belief has some main arteries, right? And then it has some little arteries, just like roots on a tree, okay? So you have some real thick roots, and then you have all the little roots that are out there looking for nourishment. They're looking for water. They're looking for minerals to be able to feed the plant. So this is just where the memories are coming in. We have these memories of, that validate this lack of self-worth, validate that you're not enough, validate that you're not worthy, validate that you suck, validate whatever it is, right? So it continues to validate. And what you'll find happening is that those ones have been ingrained in the minds for many, many years, and those are the predominant supporters that keep that belief in power. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to figure out where's all the support coming from. In addition to that, we need to really connect it to our fear. What are you most afraid of happening? Because fear is going to be the paralyzer. Fear is going to be the thing that continues to show up. It's going to be the thing that continues to hinder. It's going to be the thing that continues to block you. So where is the fear? And how is that showing up in your life? We want to be able to connect that dots, because the fear is going to be connected to the behavioral patterns. The conditioning is going to be giving it its like validity, right? And what's kept it in power. But fear is going to be what is fueling, okay? It's just continuing to fuel it. Does that make sense? All right. So we need to discover both of those to get to the root. By doing that, now we've got the picture. Because again, the point of the getting to the root is really just to get the map of the mind. Once you have that, now we can move into the second step. All right, so the second step, which is release. So release now is where we have to begin to release the story. We have to release the power that is connected to the belief. So the easy answer for release is where we just choose to forgive, or we choose to let go, or we choose to think of something different, right? The true answer, what I mean by that is that what it really is going to take for permanent results is that we have to release each story, each piece of evidence, each behavioral pattern, each conditioned program. So this is where that map kind of becomes, your guideline. Like, this is your checklist of all the things that you have to do to truly be resolved, right? To just get to the place where this is not infecting or affecting your life anymore. And so this means that we have to release both the story and the memories that are keeping it locked in. This is going to be hard for some people because we have been telling these stories a certain way for most of our lives. That we know that we're not worthy because our parents were neglectful, because they abandoned us, because they abused us, because of whatever. And logically, we're like, that makes sense, right? Logically, we've thought these beliefs so often that it just feels like the truth. There's no question of this truth anymore. And this is where your mind is lying to you. Just because your parents weren't capable of loving you doesn't mean that you're not lovable. Just because your parents weren't capable of loving you doesn't mean you're not lovable. And I know logically you might feel that that's true, but it's not. You absolutely know that your love isn't dependent on things outside of you. Otherwise, that's called conditional self-worth. Is that when our worth is dependent on our parents' support or love, on our siblings' support and love, on society's support and love, right? That's where we went back to the definition in the beginning, where your definition of self-love is dependent on things outside of you and not inside of you. So we want to release that story. We want to release all of those stories that you've been telling that continue to validate why you're less than, why you don't matter, why you suck, why you're worthless. So we want to release that so we can get into a place where we can then consciously choose something else. And that's where we're going. All right. So I'm giving you a little clue of where we're going from here. But you have to be able to release the story. You have to be able to transform the memories, how you think and feel about them. So once we do that, now we can get to the place where we can be resolved. Now resolve is fun, right? This means that you are completely resolved. There's no question in your heart or mind. There's no question in your decision anymore. You're completely resolved. So this means is that you have resolved all of the memories, all of the evidence, and you've gotten yourself to a place where you can confidently and consciously decide, because that's what resolve means. It's a decision where you can decide who you are, what your worth is defined as, and who you choose to be moving forward from today. So it's the conscious decision. It is the election, right? Where we're not defaulting to whatever the old programming is, right? We're not allowing that to be the definer anymore. We're not allowing the old story to define your worth or your value or your esteem or your confidence or your behavior. We're not allowing this old conditioned self that was installed on accident. All right? It was installed on accident. Even the most toxic people in the world, I bet, wouldn't want you as an infant, as a child, to grow up feeling the way that you feel about yourself right now. But that was the result of everybody not knowing any better. And everybody having their own stuff and stories that haven't been transformed. And so as a result, we have hurt people raising hurt people, okay? Or we have hurt people hurting people, is what I'm trying to say. So we have to take back that power. We have to take back our identities, and that's where you become very resolved in the decision of who you are, how you show up, and who you're going to be moving forward. This is your choice. This is your power, but it's not a choice that you have instant access to indefinitely if you don't do the inner work first. This is what I'm saying. The easy answer is just choose to think something else about yourself. And you can do that for a little while. But the default self is so rooted in the mind that it will eventually dominate the new decision. Hence why this is the last step and not the first step. Are you with me on that? Okay? Is that for you to become completely resolved in this new choice, this new identity, this new conscious creation of self, is that you have to be willing to dig deep, get your hands dirty, and to dig up all of the crap and transform all of the stories, release all of the memories, release all of the perceptions that you've held on to that support the old self, and become very resolved and very, very determined in who it is that you are and shall be moving from forward on this day forward. That's what it means to be resolved. That's what it means to reclaim and take back our power, is to be completely resolved. And it really is powerful. So you ask yourself, what new story do you need to tell? And who do you consciously choose to be? So what new story do you need to tell that will support the new self? So the first step is really define who the new self is, right? Who's that self-worth? Remember, we started with that in the very beginning. Like, what is your definition of worth to you? And then once we identify what that is, it's like, what new story do we need to tell that supports that belief, that program, that identity, and not the old one? And then who do you consciously choose to be? Like, how do you consciously choose to behave emanating from this new space and not the old? This is what I mean. It takes consistency, time, and it takes work. It's not something that you could just do overnight. Like, it takes a commitment for you to be willing to get completely resolved into this new state of being. It takes a lot of work, and it's worth every ounce of the sacrifice, every ounce of the commitment, every ounce of it, because at the end of the day, who wouldn't want your default belief and reaction to be rooted in a place where it's like you know that you are worthy regardless on what life throws at you, that you know that you are enough and that you matter regardless on who loves you and regardless on what it is that you face. That's truly what it means to be self-love. So I only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure to answer in the chat box, and I'll stay a few minutes over with those of you who are on the live. But for those of you who are watching this, if you have some questions or if you're really ready to work through this, okay, if you're saying like, all right, Bonnie, I'm ready to get to the root and dig a little bit deeper on this and really draw out that map, then you're going to want to snag 20 minutes free with me. You can get on my calendar absolutely free for 20 minutes. Let me see. We're going to send out the link for that in an email that goes out tomorrow with the recording of this. And so it's really easy. I'll put it in the chat box here really quick for you guys as well. So you guys could have this here. You can snag 20 minutes. Let's talk about drawing up that game plan. Let's talk about figuring out how we can help you map out your mind to give you better results. It's going to allow you to take this journey and this conversation a little bit further beyond just this initial conversation, beyond this, because as I mentioned, if you're really committed, 100% of what we need to and you need to do is that you need some extra support. You're going to need accountability and you're going to need a game plan. And that's what we can build together. So, all right. So if you guys are in the chat box, let's see what I can answer for you. Who's had an aha? Who has questions? Who's like really ready to do something big and bold and audacious? So Maggie had a jet. I know she's trying to catch a plane. Awesome of you to be able to join us for that short time period. Nicole just says, great class. I learned a lot and I'm committed to doing the work to getting my power back. Awesome. So now again, Nicole, so that goes back to like you have the will. It's finding the way, right? And it's like finding the way no matter what obstacles are going to present themselves for you. And that's really the trick. Remember, you guys, we were talking about the hardest thing with knowing what you need to do is really connecting that willpower to getting through the obstacles to making it happen. So if there's any way we can support you with that, Nicole, just let me know. As always, you know, we're here to support you on your journey. I know you have a big trip coming up, but if there's, you know, something that we can do to help you, you just let us know. So if anybody else has questions or comments, now's the time to put them in the chat box. Otherwise, I just going to take a moment to just thank everybody for spending an hour with me. I encourage all of you to continue the conversation, to continue the journey, to investing in yourself. You're worth it. Whether you feel it or not right now, you are absolutely worth it. And this is a battle you can win, 100%. It's a battle you can win indefinitely. And I encourage and I support and I love you through that process. And if there's anything I or my team can do to help you along the way, I pray that you never hesitate to reach out. We are here for you every step of the way, okay? So let's see. So Nicole, at first going to Bali, yeah, for my yoga teacher training, which I am absolutely worth I'm not sure it stopped the sentence, but good. I'm glad that you're going to do that, and you are absolutely worth it. Yes. Awesome, Nicole. So I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for joining me. The replay is going to be available tomorrow. There'll be an email that goes out with a link to this as well as a link to the calendar, or you're welcome to just email, hit reply on the calendar and say, hey, Bonnie, shoot me that link to the calendar link. We're here for you guys. And until next time, mwah, bye.